working. We're live. We're live.
It's working. We're live.
Okay. Technical whatevers. Okay.
Yes, the age of the internet. All right, so we are officially live. We are doing this.
Yay.
Welcome, everybody. We are here today with a friend of mine, a client, Katie Rampen, who does breast cancer awareness, and it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and who better to have come and share her just brilliant brain with us than the woman who does this work year-round, not just in October.
That's right. It should be all the time, right? 365 days of the year, right? But we only focus on it in October.
Absolutely.
And I love it. My mentor actually calls it Breast Health Awareness Month, right? Because it's not just like we want to be aware of breast cancer. We want to be like, what do we need to do to prevent this, right? That's what we don't want to.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I do the same thing. I have big objections to menstrual hygiene day.
Oh, yeah.
Every year on menstrual hygiene day, I like to put a post up that says, "This is your yearly reminder that your pussy is not dirty.
Oh, God.
It doesn't need hygiene. It cleans itself."
There you go. There you go.
So,
that's right.
I feel you.
we don't need the chemicals. We don't need the chemicals. Our bodies are amazing. Our bodies are amazing. Yeah.
That's exactly it. So we've got a couple people live with us now. Hi, guys. I see Noelle. I see Debbie on here. Hello, hello. Feel free to post stories or takeaways or questions as they come up. I'm going to be paying attention to the chat today. And Katie is going to be sharing with us 3 things that we need to know to prevent breast cancer,
Correct.
which is always the best way to go. Prevention is definitely better than after the fact. So I'm very excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So share with us a little bit of how you got started doing this.
Yeah. Well, so I am now, fortunately or unfortunately, a 2-time breast cancer survivor. What does that mean? That means 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with my first breast cancer. Which, floored me, I will just say, because it was on my radar, of course, and I was going for my yearly checkups and whatnot, but you just don't ever think it's going to happen to you, really. You really don't. So, I spent the last 8 years researching this topic and found out all this mind-blowing information that's just not readily out there. So I decided 2 years ago, I really wanted to become a health coach. So I became a wellness empowerment coach so that I could share this information with everybody. Because what I found with our healthcare system, we have a couple problems with it, but one of the big ones is that there's this emphasis on, curing and just taking, just getting through a treatment, but they don't ever get at the root cause of illness, right? And that's what's really important. And if you actually not only get the root cause of the illness, you can actually even go back further upstream and look like, oh, we can actually prevent this because we know this, this, and this, and this leads to that. So, that's super important. So basically, then fast forward to this past March, I actually felt a new lump in my breast and was shocked because I had a double mastectomy 8 years ago, and they told me I couldn't get breast cancer again. So, wow. And even in the research that I had done, I didn't really think that was possible. I always knew it could metastasize to other parts of the body and still be called breast cancer. That's how you can get breast cancer recurrence, but never knew that, you could actually go that route and have it come back. So I had done some of the things that I knew, because like I said, I've been researching this and I've been putting them into practice, but it wasn't really until now that I'm like, okay, now I'm going full board with everything I know. And there were things, I have something called my 7 simple steps to a healthier you, which I will make available to everybody. And basically it's if you follow these literally 7 simple steps, you're on the right path to supporting your immune system and to having a healthy lifestyle and to not getting these diseases. But there was, if you don't, it's kind of like, if you don't do one step, if you miss a step, you know, like those people go, well, you're a health coach. Well, you know, why did it come back? Well, I wasn't following all my steps, right? You got to do it all. And part of it even is, you know, my current journey, I'm really focusing on stress, on the mental part of it, right? Stress, emotional, toxic relationships, all of that, you know, there's so much of that. And I had detoxified my life a little bit, but there was still a lot there that needed to be cleaned up. So, you know, working on all of that. But I'm actually, of course, by telling my story, I'm jumping to step 3. So the 3 things I wanted to talk about is the first thing I feel like everyone needs to know is am I at risk, right? Because if you don't even think you're at risk or whatever, then it's not even on your radar. And this is part of the problem. Most people think that cancer, breast cancer, is genetic. And this is not true. Now, this is something that they've learned in the last couple of years. But this is huge, right? Because only say, and I follow a lot of doctors, statisticians, scientists, so there's different numbers out there, but let's say maximum of 10% of cancers are genetic. So that's huge, because that means, well, it goes 2 ways. It's great because if it runs in your family, it's like, no, I'll get to that. I was going to say, it goes 2 ways because you, I know, okay, I had a little brain mess up there.
Well, on one hand,
yeah.
So I did this research years ago as well, and I saw the same number that you just posted. 10% is genetic. And, you know, my family has the BRCA gene, so we are all extra careful because the genetics are there. You know, my grandmother died in her late 30s of breast cancer. My aunt had a double mastectomy in her 30s, and then my sister was diagnosed in her early 30s, and then again at 50. So it's a lot in my family. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, well, that just means that 90% of breast cancer is a lot more preventable than we thought. Because if it's only 10% that's that genetic component, then a lot of it means it's outside influence. It's external things that are causing the cancers to come up and come back or be more dominant. So to me, that just said, well, then the majority of it's preventable.
Yes, exactly. And there's even better news, because with epigenetics, they've learned that you can actually turn genes on and off. You can actually upregulate and downregulate your genes. So this means that even if you have it in your family, even if it does run in your family, it doesn't necessarily mean you can get it. Because if you can do the lifestyle things that will keep your, you know, chromosomes and mitochondria and happy, you know, all that sort of thing, your immune system happy, you might actually downregulate those genes and they'll never express and you won't get breast cancer. So that's really awesome. But I do want to speak to the large population. Most people fall in the 90%, where it's like, well, it doesn't run in my family, so why do I have to worry about it? Well, you need to know that most of it's not genetic, so therefore you really do need to not worry about it, but you need to know that you need to take an active stand in your care.
So basically everybody just needs to get on board.
Pretty much. Yeah. Because
if you're
go
from that assumption.
If you're genetically disposed, like you said, you want to be even extra careful, but certainly if you're not, doesn't mean like, oh, I don't have to worry about it. It doesn't run in my family, because it happens. So the first thing is, so now that we know that we're all kind of at risk, then you want to know, how should I monitor my breast health? And this is one of those things that, again, I didn't learn until I had to learn it. And I wish I had known what I know now. But, you know, the thing about October is they really push the mammograms, right? And that is something that, you know, is now the standard of care. But the reality is the best way you can monitor your breast health is with self-exams. And they were, you know, when we were growing up, they were doing these, right? You used to have those little things in the shower. They would show you how, you know, how to do it. And so for your peeps, I double checked on this, but the best time to give yourself a self-exam is right after your menstrual cycle. And it's often easiest in the shower when your skin is warm and whatnot. And I have, I think you're going to put in the chat or something. I follow some people that have developed something called My Breast Friend. And it's actually a system to teach you how to self-examine your breast, like, because it's not so easy. You say, well, look for lumps. Well, breasts are inherently sometimes lumpy, and just because you have a lump, don't freak out. It doesn't mean, you know, that something's wrong. So, you know, this system actually can teach you to have the same skill that a physician has in looking for a lump. So anyway, you can check that out or not. But the main thing is, even if you go yearly to your gynecologist, there are still 360, you know, 5 days of the year, whatever, that your breast can change, right? Literally can happen pretty quickly. So you want to be regularly checking yourself. Like that's number one. Number two would be to see, you know, your gynecologist and get checked out. Number three, I talk about are thermograms. Now, thermograms are a little bit controversial, but they are awesome because they don't cause any harm to the body. They use, you know, they detect heat, infrared heat. And so what happens, they can detect something going awry years, you know, long before a mammogram, anything would show up on a mammogram. And the reason is because basically inflammation and blood flow shows up as red areas on your body. So you start seeing that and you're like, ooh, something could be going on here. Now I can't detect it per se. It's not that kind of a diagnostic test, but it's where you can start. It doesn't, like I said, it does no harm to your body. And if you start with what they call, you know, everyone wants a benchmark. Even with mammograms, they always want to get one early before they think there's nothing wrong with you, so that they can compare later on and go, oh wait, this wasn't there before. So thermograms are great. And then if something shows up, then you go the next step and you get an ultrasound, or, you know, if you want to skip thermograms, you can go right to ultrasound and you can get that to happen. That's fine too. Ultrasounds use sound waves. So again, they're harmless. Why do I bring all this up? Because mammograms use radiation, right? And they use quite a bit of radiation. In fact, I don't want to say the statistic that I said. I was shocked how much radiation. You can actually look up, all different tests have different amounts of radiation, but mammograms are up there. I hate to say it. And you know, and this is in combination with everything. There's always pros and cons. You've got to weigh pros and cons. I'm not saying never get a mammogram, but what I am saying is use them judiciously. And I have a great video on my Facebook page. It's pretty funny. A woman going into a gynecologist, I'm 34. I don't want to get breast cancer. Give me my mammogram now. Well, no, not when you're 34, right? I mean, and here's again, the next thing is hopefully we're moving into more what I call individualized medicine, where, yeah, there's recommendations. The recommendations range from starting mammograms at 40 to 45 to 50. There's 3 different camps out there right now. Why do they differ so much? The reality is none of those answers are correct. There's only the right information for you. So this is, you know, those are all recommendations, but they're not necessarily, you know, for me, since it was on my radar with my family, i.e. my grandmothers both had breast cancer. So, and I breastfed my children, so my breasts were dense and whatnot. And so they wanted, right after I stopped breastfeeding, they were like, ooh, this doesn't look good. And they started me mammograms really early. And then they wanted them constantly. And so I got way too many mammograms. Like that could have caused my breast cancer right there. So yeah, the mammograms cause breast cancer. They can, they absolutely can. So radiation alters DNA. And if you had breast cancer, the last thing you want to do is smash it in the machine, because you smash your breast, now you've just released it. A lot of times you can have what's called DCIS, which is what I had the first time around. DCIS is Ductal Carcinoma in situ, which just means it's like pre-breast cancer. It means like there's stuff going on inside your breast ducts that is not healthy. And if it were to break out, you could get cancer. But it could be you could live your whole life and it never break out and you'd be fine. And I would have done the mastectomy for nothing, right? Which is super traumatic to my body. It was, you know, I went through treatment for a year. Okay, but then, you know, in my case, as it turned out, I ended up with stage 1. So 1 had escaped, but how do I know it could have escaped? Because of that mammogram. That mammogram could have actually caused what would have stayed in my breast and never caused me a problem in my life to being released. So as it turned out, for me, it was a good thing that I did the mastectomy, because it did go to stage 1 and whatnot. And then now obviously it's spread and whatnot. So, but I
so you really need to think about these judiciously. I mean, so in the comments, Debbie said, my doctor wants me to have a mammogram and then 6 months later a breast MRI. Why can't I just do the MRI?
Yeah. So usually that is unfortunately one of these insurance issues, which I hate to say. A lot of times the way they do it is first you get the mammogram, then we allow the ultrasound, then we allow the MRI.
Right.
So I find that worrisome. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, that's why I would get the thermogram, and then you could see what's up. And if there's something up, like I said, if then like, ooh, something is there, maybe maybe it's worth it to do the mammogram, but.
Yeah, I do thermography. I've been doing it since I turned 30. So I don't do it every year, but I had a couple done I had 2 done the first year just to establish those 2 comparative ones. And then I've been doing them about every 2 years since then. In fact, I think this year is probably the year. And of course, I'm not where my thermographer is. So I might have to go figure that one out somehow. But and then she also said that her doctor won't let her do an ultrasound, says it's not a diagnostic tool. And my doctor, my OBGYN said, prescribe me the ultrasound as a diagnostic tool. So, it's interesting to see how doctors differ, because when I told the doctor I went to that for my pelvic exam and breast exam 1 year, and she went through my family history, and she asked me if I've ever done an ultrasound, and I told her I was doing thermography. And she said, well, let's just do an ultrasound while I have you here, and then that way we'll have the ultrasound too. So it'll be a nice confirmation. So she prescribed me an ultrasound. In fact, she sent me to like a low-cost ultrasound clinic in LA. It cost me $50, in, out, no problem. I didn't have health insurance at the time. So it was really a like super helpful because it was able to put my mind at ease for $50, and have that ultrasound on my file and done. So it might, this is the thing about, our healthcare providers. Sometimes we need to get second opinions, and there's a reason that the term second opinion even exists, because having, I always think of it as your health counsel. Like if you're really working on something, you need not just your doctor, but you need someone who gives you a second opinion. You need a health coach that specializes in what it is you're working on. Like probably an acupuncturist or, some kind of, like you need, depending on what it is, maybe you need a massage therapist, maybe you need a naturopath, but whatever it is, like, I've always thought of it as like have a health council, like have the different people of your community, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your health. Your doctor's not. Right. Your health coach isn't. Nobody is but you. Your job is to go to as many people as possible, get the information that you can, and make the best decision that you can make for yourself, for your own health, so that no matter what happens, you feel like you did the right thing. So I don't get mammograms despite my family history, despite, hitting 40 and getting the notice in the mail that it's time to start your mammograms. And I was just like, I feel comfortable doing what I do, knowing what I know, and that's my choice. And if something happens down the line, I'll be comfortable with the choice that I made for myself, because I did what I thought was best for me with the information that I had. Right. So you have that's a bit of that, self. No, that makes total sense. And that's why I say this. That's why I feel like it's so important to get this information out there. I'm not even
well, I know I am sort of leaning toward one thing over another, but I'm not really telling you what to do. But I am telling you, like, you want to know these things, because I didn't know these things. Nobody told me that mammograms could cause breast cancer. Nobody told me that, you know, and this is the thing, people say, well, you know, people might argue that thermograms don't always catch everything. Well, mammograms have false positives all the time. People have mastectomies that didn't even have breast cancer. Can you imagine going through that and actually having no breast cancer? I mean, that's almost criminal. 1 in 10 women get diagnosed falsely from a mammogram. Like, ouch.
Yeah.
So we got to come up with something new. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no kidding. Patricia jumped on here and said the same thing. The mammogram is recommended as a first step, and insurance companies will only pay for that. So
yeah, no, that is the way it is. And I also know someone recently who had the whole issue with, she went for an ultrasound follow-up, and there was a whole mess up because there's a difference between screening mammograms. I mean, and diagnostic ones, and also ultrasounds. The same is true, right? So how they build them and all of that is different in what they do. So a lot of times there is sort of this, I just recently had to deal with it. I recently got an ultrasound because I was worried about something, and they were like, oh, you need to come in and get a mammogram first. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't get a mammogram. I have, you know, 2 implants that will, you know, I cannot get a mammogram. Like, even if I wanted to, I can't, or well, they say you can, but oh my God, that would be the stupidest thing ever. How to spread my silicone into the rest of my body, which
bring a link.
Yeah, no. And like I said, if you had told me 10 years ago that I would have implants, I would have told you you're crazy, because I don't recommend them. You know, you don't ever want any foreign object in your body, but you know, I didn't have what I felt like was a whole lot of choice. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. We won't, that's hopefully won't be in that scenario.
And at the end of the day, that's another one of those very personal decisions that no one can make but yourself. And you know, that's one of those things, like, you just have to respect any woman for getting through it however she felt best for herself, and or man or woman, because men can get breast cancer as well.
They
so
absolutely
anyone who ends up with breast cancer and has to do that, you have to just respect whatever they choose to do. I mean, for some, it's like this is a way of celebrating, and you just have to, you know, it really just depends on the person. So we had another question in here that I don't know if this is necessarily an expertise area for you, but I thought I'd throw it out there. How do you feel about the bioidentical hormones, especially for somebody who's had breast cancer before and taking estrogen or progesterone?
Ah, interesting. Well, I would say that I don't know a whole lot of that's specific, but okay, here's the truth. 80% of breast cancers are fueled by estrogen. Okay. So that's why usually when you hear what kind of breast cancer do you have, you hear, a lot of times you hear what's called hormone HR positive, which means hormone receptor positive. And then there's something else called HER2, and that's usually HER2 negative is the most common, but you don't really need to know that. But why I'm bringing this up, absolutely estrogen. Now, okay, I don't want to say estrogen causes cancer. Like, estrogen is crucial for so many of our body functions, right? In fact, I just learned recently, this was a new one, it affects our memory, our short-term memory. I'm like, oh, no wonder I'm on anti-estrogen medication right now, and my memory's been going. That's why I had like a little brain fart earlier. Anyway, it's been happening, and I'm like, wow, but I'm lowering my estrogen. So, you know, we need estrogen, I guess is my point. Your body makes it, so we need it. But when you start artificially adding it, like, I do not recommend birth control pills, for instance, right? They are linked to breast cancer. So when you're artificially taking hormones, that's where I would sit down with someone and actually really assess your risk, right? Because there are other risks too. I mean, you've probably heard the whole thing, like if you have that Ashkenazi Jew in your background, whatever. There are certain factors, like if they run in your family, like if the BRCA gene runs in your family, whatever, and you do not want to be taking estrogen, or hormones. I mean, you do, you know. Oh, but here's a great thing. So this is now what I teach, right? Is that the cool thing is contrary to what you think, plant-based estrogens actually work as what we call an aromatase inhibitor. Aromatase inhibitors, like the drug that I'm on, actually sort of block, because,
Yeah.
and this is why I'm jumping all over the place, but why weight is a factor in breast cancer, because if you're obese, fat cells emit estrogen, right? And that's converted into estrogen that can increase your breast cancer risk. That's why they say it's not just because they're just trying to dump on people that are overweight. It actually is again, another chemical thing. And so again, you want to look at all these factors and say, well, I don't want to add to it. But if you things like soy, and flax seeds, my new one is flax seeds. I grind a tablespoon of flax seeds every day. They actually work to, manage your estrogen. So you can manage your estrogen, but if you are artificially adding to it with, hormones, I just would say you'd have to be careful and kind of know what you're doing.
Just really sit down with your doctor and tell them we've got to talk this out, and you got to give me more than the 5 minutes you're allotted.
Yeah,
exactly. Real advocate for yourself.
Yeah, which goes back to, we circle back to what we said earlier, which is, what kills me, like you getting that thing in the mail. I mean, that's almost criminal, because we got to get to an individualized medicine thing, right? It's really, every person is different, and you can't just say, do this or do that, right? Because you got to know all the ends.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of flax. I use it sometimes for my perimenopausal clients, as a way of helping to kind of bridge the gap. Soy, we actually in my program this last week, we did our taste module. So we talked about foods, and we had a whole conversation about soy, because there are a few perimenopausal and a few postmenopausal women in the community. And so it was like, if you're going to do soy, you have to make sure it's non-GMO and fermented, and it's got to be really top of the line. So it's just easier to look for flax and get it, because you have to do so much
I would agree,
making sure that the soy is good, that it was like, just go get flax. It's just easier.
Yeah, with flax, you're gonna be pretty. Oh, I'm sorry, my internet's going out. With flax, you're gonna be pretty safe. But yeah, I agree. In fact, I was so excited. I went to Costco the other day, and I'm like, ooh, they do have organic soy, and organic by definition means it's not GMO. So you always want to go for organic, and which that would go into my third thing. So we've sort of covered the first two, am I at risk, and then ways to monitor your breast health. And then the third thing is going to be to look at all the things that you can do in your lifestyle to promote health and, decrease your probability of getting something like breast cancer. And along those lines, one of, so it's my 7 steps, I'll just tick them off real quick. But the first one is drinking plenty of fresh, clean water. The second one is clean, whole, what am I trying to say? Whole foods, right? Like not processed foods, not GMO, organic. The next thing is making sure you get enough sleep, and not just enough sleep, but quality sleep. That's a really big one. Exercise. And again, like we're not moving our bodies. You got to keep the lymph system moving. You got to, all of this is super important to prevent breast cancer. Exercise, and then detoxifying your home and your world. And so that's a huge category, from everything from all the products you use, everything you put on your body, and all the cleaning supplies you use, everything that's in your house. I mean, it does get a little overwhelming, which is why when I started the conversation, I said, well, I did some of the things on my list, but not all of them. I mean, I know people, I follow people that have done all of them. I mean, they've literally built a house from scratch. They got rid of the Wi-Fi. Yeah. Because EMFs is another big one you want to be careful of. There's so many things, and people are like, I know everyone wants just the one thing. Well, what one thing can I get rid of? Yeah, the problem is there's so many things and you don't know what one thing is going to overfill your bucket. The bucket tips over and now you're sick, right? So you just want to, as much as possible, you know, do as many right things as you can. And that's, you know, so that's where I say, like, you don't have to, I mean, I was amazed. So even things like scented candles. I love scented candles. Well, no, they've got chemicals in them. They're not good for you. You know, better to go the route of natural oils and whatnot. I mean, there's plenty of wonderful things. The thing is, most things there's alternatives for. So that's the great thing about the times we're living in.
Yeah.
You can go shopping and get the organic. You can, like I said, like, woohoo, Costco had, I mean, like, it's available, right? Organic foods is more available. So all of that is more readily.
You just got to start with one thing and then move on to the next and just keep the process moving forward one thing at a time.
And you can't.
Okay, so what's number 6?
6. Okay. Yeah. So that was 5. Well, 6 is where do we go from here? Let's see. Oh, 6, right. Duh. That is basically reduce stress, and it's kind of the whole mental part of it, right? So it's really about practicing mindfulness, maybe having a yoga practice, doing meditation, gratitude practice. I love this. I mean, you know, I was, you know, and people talk about journaling. There's just, and then really looking at your relationships, right? Like cleaning up all those, like, we know we're in the midst of huge upheaval right now with what's happening with our election and everything. But, you know, there are some people that it's just, you just got to say to yourself, it's not healthy for me to be, you know, sometimes you just have to walk away from certain people because they cause so much turmoil in your life, and that will actually reflect in your health down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the thing is, when somebody says removing that toxic person from your life, the face that just sprang to your head, that's the toxic person. Like, we know who it is, whether we want to admit it or not. If there is somebody in there that's causing you stress and anxiety and toxicity, you know who it is. You just have to admit it to yourself and then figure out how to do it. So it's certainly one of those things that's like, you know, already.
Yeah, exactly. It's a hard reality, but, and then the flip side of that is just, you know, spending so much more time.
Yes.
And people get worked up about the whole, well, I don't know how to meditate. I don't know mindfulness. It's really not that complicated. And of course, and even the ones that I do, I always do guided ones, and there's tons of them out there. There's a wonderful app called Inside LA, or Inside Timer. I'm sorry. Inside LA is a group in LA that does, but that's another good resource. But that's Inside Timer, there's 2, tons of free meditations. But the point is, you know, it's actually, this is all being studied now, right? So you've got to spend more. We spend so much time in the past, in the future, so much time in fear, so much time in worry, and that produces the negative chemicals, right? That's the cortisol, that's the fight or flight. And that suppresses your immune system. If you suppress your immune system, now things like cancer are gonna start.
Anyone on my page has been hearing all year about how stress affects our reproductive hormones and how it changes the way that our bodies work. And I mean, I have done nothing but, since this pandemic hit, basically say, your periods are going to get weird, strange things are going to happen. These are all parts of why. So everyone on this page by now should damn well better know how stress affects the body.
But that's what I'm saying. Like that category alone, like what I keep hearing over and over, the doctors that I'm following now, they're like, that's huge. Like they'll have this, a lot of people have these 7 steps. There's something about 7 or whatever, 7 parts. But they'll say, like, you know, if you're missing that one step, that one piece, that could be it, right? That could be it. So, and I don't think there's a single person on this, you know, that's watching right now that doesn't have a huge degree of stress right now. We are living in very stressful times. But
there's no way around it.
There's no way around it. But the thing is, it's amazing if you can focus on the moment, or you can focus on gratitude, then it's like, oh, wow, like in this moment, I'm fine. I'm great. You know, like don't worry about the future or the past, like just be more present, and then, or just start thinking about, oh my God, all the great things that you have in your life that you have to be grateful for. And it just shifts everything. There's just this like switch.
I got a couple more
yeah, go ahead.
questions and comments coming up, but what's number 7 before I dive back into the
number
comments?
7. Okay, so number 7, well, this is funny because it's not funny. 7 is practice good hygiene. And I say it's funny because these came out long before coronavirus hit. But it was really interesting. I once played a game, and you had to like find out who was BSing and who was telling the truth. And one of the questions was, well, why do kids get sick so much more than adults? And like what I thought was like, oh, it's because, you know, their immune systems aren't as advanced and whatnot. No, actually the truth is they just don't practice good hygiene. So this factor alone, you know, so this gets back to what you're all sick of hearing, but wash your hands and, you know, have a clean, and it's not just have a clean environment, right? Like you like, unfortunately it does matter if you have a clean home, like dust is also toxic and mold is toxic.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you gotta be clean. You gotta be, but I will say this because this is another big pet peeve of mine. Antibacterial soaps, no, you don't need them. They're not good. They create superbugs. They're bad for your skin. Regular soap, right? You don't need anything special. Regular soap and water.
Yeah, if you need the sanitizer, save it for those times when like you really need it. Like, you know, you're in the middle of a group of people, or we have to travel this coming month. So, you know, you're
going to have some in your purse.
Shit out of places when we go back and forth. But otherwise, yes, 100%. Like save that stuff for when you really need it and just stick to the classics while you're at home.
Yeah.
So real quick, we've got a couple of more comments down here. So one is, are you recording this? Yes, we are. It will be available as soon as we're done. It'll convert and you'll be able to come back and watch it here whenever you want. And Patricia said, how about toxic emotions?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that goes right along with toxic relationships. Okay, this actually, thank you, Pat. That's an awesome point, because this I'm hearing over and over as well. Like the key to your health is self-love. And I want to say, especially with women, I love this. This was actually a Qigong master that I heard speak recently. And he said, this is especially true for females, but females, you know, we are the caregivers. A lot of times we are the people that take care of other people. And oftentimes at the expense of ourselves. So the reality is self-care is not selfish, right? You got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of anyone else. And, a lot of women have just toxic thoughts themselves. You know what I mean? They're just flogging, they don't like their body. They don't think they look, whatever, we're just on our cases all the time, like we really don't give ourselves a break, and we really need to practice that self-love. So that is huge. That's something I'm working on personally. I'm just really good at loving other people, but not so good at loving myself. But it's got to start here, right? Buck's got to start with you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. Let's see. We also have, my aunt got single cell lung cancer, never smoked after battling my uncle in a divorce. Not breast cancer, but the same idea. Yeah, I know.
No, I hear those stories all the time. Like they go through like that. A lot of recurrences happen after something that, traumatic happens. And emotional trauma is huge. And there are healers out there that work with that, but it's a big one.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which again, so that gets you back to the gratitude practice, or just the focusing on the positive, so that you can have that.
Kimberly, I don't think that we have any of the studies on hand at this moment. Maybe Katie can come back. So there was a question on, do you have any recommendations on studies that we can share? I didn't ask her to bring links for that. So
Well,
maybe we can
it
see
would
if Katie can dig
I
some
guess,
out.
yeah, it would depend what studies on what top. Like I said, I did research
Yeah.
just because I knew we were going to be talking about mammograms, and I thought, all right, well, let me look up the current stats. And I thought it was interesting. The Mayo Clinic says 40, American Cancer Society says 45, and like, you know, the World Health whatever is like 50. Okay, so there are different thoughts, and then there's studies. Actually, the American Cancer Society has a whole bunch of studies on their website and whatnot about breast cancer. So, you know, but here's the thing: statistics, you know, are an interesting thing because they can paint whatever point. You can skew things, right? They like to say that, you know, more people than ever are surviving breast cancer. We're living, more people than ever are getting diagnosed, right? So, you know, you've got to look at the specific studies. Like there's a specific study out there that was done in the UK. I'm trying to pull it up in my head. I want to say over 90,000 women or something. And, you know, that's where they found out that the mammograms didn't actually lead to any better results than the not or something. You know what I mean? So this is
I remember seeing that too.
Yeah. So in other words, there are lots of studies out there, but depending on, you know, and that's the thing, like, so me, like technically now I'm, you know, the minute you're diagnosed, you become a breast cancer survivor, right? But I would have never been diagnosed if I hadn't had the mammogram, but then maybe nothing would have ever happened. You know what I mean? It's very hard to, the studies are all out there. I mean, the thing is, I will admit, I'm not great with, you know, flipping back numbers to people, but that's why I'm like a concierge, right? What I've done the last 8 years is I've soaked up, I've watched countless docuseries, summits with all kinds of medical professionals from all over the world, all kinds of scientists. I read all this stuff. I can't, you know, I'm trying to get the big picture here. I'm trying to give you guys the big picture. So, you know, I mean, I will say too, I was thinking this morning, you know, because there's always the person that will says, well, what about the person that's the vegan, that's totally healthy, and they still get cancer? Yeah, well, okay, you know, there are also anomalies, you know, like there is like, I don't know, there was a comedian growing up, I'm trying to think of his name, but you know, he died when he was like 100, and he was the one that smoked cigars like every day.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about? But like, how does that happen, right? Like, of course, that's, you know, smoking. I mean, I didn't even talk about smoking. If you smoke, stop smoking. That's a no-brainer. Like, that's totally raises. Oh, and I want to bring up one other point because, like, I wanted to hit a couple key things people can do to prevent. And one of them, unfortunately, is alcohol. And again, there are lots of studies out there. Alcohol is directly linked to breast cancer. I wish it weren't the case. I love alcohol, but I was told, you know, after my first diagnosis, oh, you could have 2. And I thought, oh, 2 a day, I could do that, 2 drinks a day. And it was like, no, 2 a week. And I was like, 2 a week. So that's what's recommended. And different people, I've now heard different things. And, you know, again, find out your risk. And I'm not saying don't drink at all, but I'm saying know that things like sugar, processed sugar especially, and alcohol, all these things, like, again, and my whole thing is I'm really about everything in moderation. And I'm also about, though, empowering you to know, you know, just know the facts, and then you can take it from there, right? Like, now that I know that aluminum is bad, right? It's toxic and can cause breast cancer. I'm no longer going to use antiperspirants. I now use natural deodorants. Now, that was a choice that I made. Do you have to do that? No, but is it a risk? Yes. And it's not. It's like there's an alternative. So that's an easy one for me.
Yeah,
you know,
I like that.
So,
awesome.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, there are definitely lots of alternatives, and I guess we'll just have to do another live stream one day and talk about some of those options.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming and chatting with us today, Katie. You guys, where can people find you and find more information about you and what you're doing?
Okay, so I have a Facebook page, Katie Rampen's Healthy Families. And then I have a private Facebook group called Kicking Breast Cancer with Katie. So anyone, I mean, that's, you know, mostly for women and caregivers that want to learn how to, well, it's actually for 3 groups of people. It's for those that want to prevent breast cancer, those that currently are dealing with a breast cancer diagnosis, and those, and this is an area that's really near and dear to my heart now, those that, you know, want to prevent a recurrence or coming back, right? Because that's the area where a lot of people, they think, oh, I'm done, my treatment's done, whatever, I'm good to go. They go back to their old lifestyle, they haven't made the changes, and then boom, it comes back and hits them in the face, you know, a couple of years later. And it's not just about doing the treatment, because I'm telling you, I did the treatment. I did everything they told me to do. I did the mastectomy, I went on the drugs, it doesn't matter, right? I didn't. So now I know all these other things. I'm like, oh, okay, but I didn't do this, this, and this. So doesn't mean I'm to blame, but it means I can change it going forward. So those are the best places to look out to. And then are you able to put in the chat that link to my 3 things you need to know breast cancer?
Absolutely.
If you could put that link in there, then if you go to that, that will give you 2 things. One, it gives you access to a lot of what we covered today, but I have 3 short videos. They're each like 5 minutes long, that cover the 3 topics we did today. And then in addition, you get my PDF, 7 Simple Steps for a Healthier You. And and again, even that document, I purposely made it like you can read it in 7 minutes, right? It's like, I know we don't have time, like boom, but here's the topics. And then you would need to go a lot deeper under each one of those, which is what I'm here for. I mean, obviously I'm here available for anyone who wants to reach out for a free consultation. You can find all that information on my Facebook page, how to book a session.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Well, I put the links in the comments below, so take a look and grab them there. I also wrote out the 7 things that we can do real quick there, so it's a little preview for you guys. Thank you again for coming and sharing with us and sharing your story and just being so open and honest about all of it, because at the end of the day, the more conversations that we have, the more information gets out there, the more people can do their own research, make their own decisions, make the choices that feel best for them, instead of just blindly moving forward. So I love it.
You hit it on early in the conversation, and we're on the same page. It's just really about empowering you, because you got to take care of you. No one, you can't depend on anybody else to do it for you. You really can't. So
that's right.
Thank you.
The truth. The truth.
The truth.
Awesome. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining us. Feel free to post your questions. Katie will be keeping an eye on it, so she'll come back and answer anything. So even if you're watching this after the fact, feel free to post questions on there. Tag her, tag me, whatever. But feel free. We'll be in and out to chat with you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Go take care of your boobs. Mwah.
Thank you. The men will thank you for it.
That's right.